Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have Alexis here, and she's going to be talking about some research that she did as an undergraduate researcher. So welcome, Alexis. We are so glad to have you joining us. If you would
Thank
actually
you
just
for
kind of,
having me.
yeah, of course, so excited. If you could just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Well, I'm Alexis. I am from Enterprise, Alabama. I did my undergrad at Auburn University, getting my bachelor's of science in communication disorders. And this fall, I will be attending the University of Montevallo to get my master's of science in speech language pathology.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Thanks. I'm super excited.
So you did a research recently on social media as a platform for cyberbullying of individuals with craniofacial anomalies. Could you tell us more about that and kind of what inspires you to research that specific topic?
Sure. Whenever I was starting out at Auburn, a professor of mine encouraged me to go and job shadow at the Children's Craniofacial Disorders Clinic in Atlanta because she saw where my interest peaked in working with the cleft lip and palate community. Seems how I was born with a unilateral cleft lip and palate myself. So I went there, I job shadowed, I fell in love with the community because I didn't get to just see them work with children with clefts. I got to see them work with children with 𝐂𝐤𝐢𝐴rt syndrome, Treacher Collins, etc. And I just fell in love with it. Well, when I came back and talked to her about it, she encouraged me to get involved with some research. And I talked with another professor, and that's where we threw around some ideas. And we were really drawn to how social media and bullying with craniofacial differences, because after reading so many articles, it talked about bullying in general in this community, but it didn't talk about social media and if they were bullied. And to my knowledge, this is the first study that looks at cyberbullying and craniofacial anomalies.
Yeah, and especially with social media growing and just bullying kind of being there, that's a really important study to kind of like look into as well. Just to kind of clarify for our audience, what do you define as like bullying when you're referring to bullying?
Well, in our research, we used Olweus 1972 definition of bullying because that's most commonly cited
Mhm.
in literature. And it's the act of repeatedly causing harm or discomfort to an individual. And the act is usually repetitive and it involves an imbalance of power there.
Okay,
So it's someone going on with the intention to cause harm or discomfort to another individual.
got it. And so, how are you able to track that through social media for the research?
Uh, it's Bullying is also what we take in as it. Sometimes somebody bullies somebody without the idea that they're bullying somebody, and they don't know the difference between they're hurting somebody and they're being immature and thinking they're funny and making a joke when the other person doesn't find it funny. So bullying is also, in my opinion, perceptive. It's how we perceive it. If I'm hurt by that person or what they said to me, that's a bully. But oftentimes a true bully, it's repetitive and it keeps happening over and over, and it's almost as if they're intentionally causing harm. So it is, in a way, in the eye of the beholder. So whenever we asked in our survey that we distributed, we explained this is the definition of bullying. By this definition, did you consider yourself being bullied in your teens and adolescence or at any point? And if they would respond yes, they were able to continue the survey. And we even narrowed down to the 4 types of bullying there are. There's physical, which is hitting or kicking; verbal, like mean comments; relational, which is gossiping or excluding; and cyberbullying, which is bullying through social media. And we asked those types of questions too, if which one they would define themselves under in those categories.
Okay, got it. So could you expand on like some of the questions specifically that were on that survey?
We narrowed the questions down based off of three main categories: background, experience with bullying, and cyberbullying. And the background questions were kind of, what's your age, gender, what were you born with, a facial difference or speech disorder, or both? If you were born with a facial difference, what kind of facial difference were you born with? Those questions like that were the background questions. And then the experience with bullying, we said, were you bullied? How were you bullied, like physical, relational? And then it was, when did it start and stop, which was a key indicator to us. And we also asked if they reported it. As far as cyberbullying, we asked, were you bullied through social media? If so, what kind of social media platform? And we also asked if they reported that as well.
Okay. Was there kind of a trend that you noticed through your research in regards to like the people that actually participated in the research, like the demographics, but also just in general, the results?
The common thing we noticed, and it went along with previous cited literature with bullying and craniofacial differences, it was, if you had the greater degree of your facial difference, the more susceptible you were to being bullied. And more people with facial differences were more likely to be bullied than those with speech disorders as well. So we saw that as an ongoing track record, but most of our participants, it didn't differ as far as syndromes. We had a mostly cleft lip and palate, but cleft lip and palate can be comorbid with other syndromes such as Treacher-Collins, Pierre-Robin sequence, etc. And then we had a few that were Pierre-Robin sequence and Treacher-Collins and otopalatal digital syndrome. So we had a very good variety of syndromes, but most of them were comorbid with cleft lip and palate, or they were just cleft lip and palate.
Okay, got it. And then I guess your results that you got from specifically the craniofacial community, how does that differ from general research that has been done on social media bullying? So bullying is kind of already there as something that we notice in schools, but just in general. And what I'm hearing is like from your research that those with craniofacial syndromes are more likely to be victims of social media bullying. So do you have like percentages or stats on kind of the differences?
We did not compare in this study those with craniofacial differences and those without in cyberbullying. We want to in the future to continue and maybe incorporate that. However, we did have speech just 4 participants participate and say they only had a speech disorder with no facial difference. And we noticed that those with a facial difference were more likely to be bullied through social media than those with a speech disorder.
Got it.
So they are a more susceptible audience to it, and other literatures have elaborated that anyone with a significant physical difference outside of the norm, and I quote norm because I don't think that's a real thing, is more likely to be bullied. So because the craniofacial community presents visible differences outside of the quote norm, they are more susceptible to being bullied.
Okay, got it. And then I know you had mentioned in your research that for individuals with craniofacial anomalies, repeated questions can also be viewed as taunting or bullying. However, oftentimes what we have experienced with some of the families that we work with is that they try to encourage people to like ask questions versus stare. I guess where's the kind of the even medium between approaching someone with a difference, but also not having that come off as being taunting or bullying?
It's a very good question. And questions are beneficial and helpful when it comes to informing others of the community. However, it has been known how you ask the question. For example, a literature we cited in there talked about mothers in South Africa with children with a cleft lip and palate, asking them how they felt about bringing their child out in public before a procedure, after a procedure, questions like that. And a couple of mothers in the villages would say, I don't like the questions because I'm repeatedly bombarded, and they walk up to me and ask, one mother quoted, "What is this?" That's what somebody asked when they talked to their child was, "Oh, what is this?" Referring to her baby. So it's not necessarily wrong to be curious or to ask a question, but it is how you ask it. And I follow various social media platforms with mothers of babies with the craniofacial differences and people with a craniofacial difference. So and one mother posted what to say and a what not to say on her social media. And some of the things she referred to, please don't ask these questions, included, oh, what's wrong with their face? What happened to your child? Were they in a car accident? Will they ever look normal? It's those kind of questions, especially when often repeated and repeated, can cause harm or discomfort versus asking, oh, how did you get the scar how did they get the scar? And what medical trials will they face in the future? It's just stuff like that. It's a better, more professional way to ask than, oh, what's wrong with your face? What's up with your kid? Kind of thing like that. So that's when it is considered taunting and bullying, when it's repetitive and when it's asked in a very ignorant way.
Okay, that makes sense. That's helpful. So it's kind of the intention behind the question and how that intention's translating through. Okay. And then I'm not entirely sure if you had already mentioned this, but was the research that was done, so the population that was being researched was at the craniofacial community. Now, was the bullying that was being researched outside of the craniofacial community, or is this within the community?
This is within the community, because when we distributed the survey, we distributed it via social media. And it was mostly through Facebook and Instagram, because it's hard to distribute through Snapchat and Twitter. So we distributed through Instagram and Facebook, and I joined several private and public Facebook groups involving the cleft and craniofacial community, and introduced myself. And then I said, this is what we're working on. If you'd like to participate, you are more than welcome to, and feel free to share if you want, like hit the share button on Facebook, or even share it on their Instagram. I've had different Instagram accounts that focus on cleft and craniofacial share it on their story, or even post it and say, hey, link in bio or link in her bio, go check it out if you want to. And that's how we got it to spread the word. But because we were intended on targeting the cleft and craniofacial community, and we even asked them if they were born with a facial difference and or speech disorder. If they weren't, well, there was no other further need to participate in the survey.
Okay.
But in the future, we would like to draw those comparisons between the two groups and social media.
Okay. So that helped kind of keep it controlled, because you guys were like spot reaching out. Now, were you able to find research on more about the bullies, whether they were also within the cleft and craniofacial community, like whether the bullying was happening within the community itself, or if it was like outside bullying coming into the craniofacial and cleft community? Was that looked into at all?
We did. That's a good question, and something to look into in the future. We did not question whether people in the community were bullying each other. it was more so outsiders bullying the community because we are a smaller community, in my opinion, and we don't get as much awareness as other nonprofits do. So not many people know about us or know what Treat Your Collins is,
Right.
or Cleft Lip and Palate. So because we are the, I guess, outsiders and we look different, that's what causes the bullying. And so we didn't look at it within the community. However, that is a very interesting question that we will look forward to in the future.
Okay, awesome. And then do you have any advice for victims or bystanders of bullying?
We do. Research shows, studies do show that the more you speak up, the less likely it is to occur. So we encourage bystanders to become upstanders and speak out against the bullying for other people. And if most often why people don't report bullying is because they're scared of being the next target. They don't want to be the one that stands out and says something. So for bystanders who are worried about that, we encourage them to anonymously go to an adult. Like if you're at school, telling a counselor or a principal can be anonymous, and they can come out there and say, hey, we've gotten some tips that you were picking on this kid. We need to come and have a chat. Stuff like that. So there is power in numbers, and studies do show that by speaking up and encouraging others to speak up, there's less reporting of it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that you would like to add specifically or to touch on part of your research that we have not covered thus far?
I will say we do encourage schools, and you can look up at stopbullying.gov. Schools can implement anti-bullying policies and have discussions with all the students to let them know, hey, this is a zero tolerance policy. You will be called out if you are caught bullying. I also encourage schools, and I looked this at the stopbullying.gov website, informing others about the disabilities and other students and what they go through can help lessen the bullying and teach them more empathetic skills. So by encouraging and saying, hey, this is Alexis. She was born with a cleft lip and palate. A cleft lip and palate happens when the lip and the palate don't join completely during birth. And she has to have surgeries and sometimes go on a liquid diet. By explaining to the populations that about who we are and what we go through allows them to be more empathetic. And they don't have to ask the harsh questions of, oh, what's wrong with your face? And they can just realize who we are, and then also know, hey, we're normal people just like you, and we just have to have surgeries, or we just have this scar, but we're okay and we're great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alexis, for joining us and for doing such important research and truly helping us to envision a world where people are accepted for who they are and not what they look like. And we will go ahead and link your research below as well in the description box, and then also link the Stop Bullying website. Children's Craniofacial Association also has a free curriculum that focuses on anti-bullying and acceptance that we can also go ahead and provide, as well as letters to the teacher. But we are so grateful for having you joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. And we look so forward to additional research that you will be doing. And we hope that you will keep us posted.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.